also extend my welcome this evening. I'm sure many of you tonight are asking, well, what is a trustee and what does a trustee really do? Well, trustee has, as Steve has pointed out, a very important role in the system, and so do board employees. Board staff have a job to take a task, analyze the information, put it together and present it to the trustees in an objective fashion. Trustees, oh, I'm sorry. Trustees, on the other hand, have a more subjective position to take because they have to analyze the information they receive from staff, decide how that impacts the children in their area, the schools in their area, and the community in their area, and then make that decision as to whether it's a good idea what staff are recommending or not. Sometimes it's not consistent. Now I understand that some communities are not happy with the system and the particular trustees that are in place today, because in fact they seem to be voting all the time on whatever the board is recommending and not particularly looking after the community. If you've read the Kingston papers, you know that the particular issue or the big issue that has monopolized the Kingston area is the closing of a couple schools and all of that, and all of us, I presume Steve is also getting emails from those folks. So the trustee does have an important role, has to look at how that impacts on the children in their schools and so forth. As Steve pointed out, the Clarendon situation is a real travesty because at the beginning of September, they had a teacher, 2 teachers, and basically teaching 5 grades. Now, both Steve and I are educators. I've spent 40 years in the education business, and so I have a good understanding of that. But there's just no way that a teacher can adequately teach 5 subject areas. Now, in the Ministry of Education, they have what's called a funding formula with a basic number of lines in it. Probably, I think it's around 19 different funding lines. One of those lines is remote and rural, and I think that's one of the areas that the trustee in this area is going to have to look at to see whether we're getting our fair share. Now, the further you get away from an area, for example, in our particular situation, we're the furthest away from the board office, they tend to forget about what it is that we're all about, and perhaps you're not getting the resources, the support, and the funding you deserve. Clarendon is a clear example. It was slated for closure. The community fought to keep it open. School boards have a nasty habit of draining the resources from an area to the point that the community basically comes and says, hey, close our school, it's not worth keeping open anymore. So whoever's representing you as a trustee is going to have to fight in that regard. As I said, I have an administration background in the education system, been a vice principal, I have supervisory officer certification and principal certification. I was a trustee in the North York Board of Education for 3 years until Mr. Harris and his government decided that I should no longer have that job because my wife had worked for the system. And they passed legislation basically to say if you have a spouse in the system, you can't run for trustee. So I lost that job. Thank you.